Hello, welcome to today's webinar, Anti-Money Laundering. We at GraphAware are very happy to see so many people joining. I think some are still coming in, but we're going to start anyway. The first 2 minutes, people can catch up after, we think. From seeing who's joining, I can see that many of you already work with anti-money laundering and the problematic around it on a daily basis. We would still like to take the chance to bring everybody on the same page in this webinar. So give us the opportunity for that. We'd like to start with introducing ourselves, your hosts. My name is Esther Bergmark. I'm heading the product management at GraphAware, and I'm joined today by Alexandra Klakanova, who works in our marketing department. And Alexandra, I'm really happy to have you here today. You know a lot about money laundering, and you're going to introduce us to the subject today. Thank you for joining. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm good, thank you. I wouldn't say I know a lot about money laundering, but I'll try to get everybody on the same page so we can do the demo next.
Okay, it's a subject that you can never know enough about. That's true. Good. Okay, so how do you start bringing everybody on the same page? I think the first agenda point is yours, right? When we talk about why we are here, why money laundering is a global problem. And after that, we would like to talk about graphs. Why are graphs the best approach to fight money laundering, or why they help? And with that, we would like to show you a bit of Hume, and the demo will be the point where you're going to learn most about Hume and how we facilitate the fight against money laundering. Afterwards, in the end, there will be time for questions and answers. So please note down all your questions or send them in the chat, and we answer them in the end. Okay, Alexandra.
Okay.
Why is money laundering a problem?
Okay, well, let's start with what is money laundering, right? In case somebody doesn't know, but you all know probably that it's basically disguising dirty money, right? So when somebody does something illegal, they make profits that are not really kosher. They need to disguise the money and make it sound legitimate, make it look legitimate, actually. So money laundering is basically that, disguising the money trail and making the money look legitimate in the end. And it's a problem because a lot of money is laundered every year. It's $800 billion to $2 trillion every year. Is just an enormous number. And most of the time, the money launderers get away with it. Like, according to United Nations, 90% of money laundering activities stay undetected. And it just goes on.
Well, Alexandra, I mean, this is a bit baffling. You know, I think when I first saw these numbers, I couldn't help but Google. We just saw the greetings from Italy in the chat. Italy has a GDP of 1.8 trillion. So the total amount of money laundering is more than a nation state's GDP. Right. That's scary. And that all this goes undetected is even more scary. But, you know, how is it done? I don't think they go to the laundromat with the money, right? How is money laundered?
No, not exactly. Usually it has 3 stages, right? So you make money that is dirty, you need to disguise it. What do you do? First, you introduce it to the financial system. Sorry, that's the placement stage, where just, you know, the money is in the financial system. Now you need to kind of put it further away from you so you're not associated with it. So you start with layering, which is essentially moving the money, maybe splitting it to many small transactions, moving it across many different bank accounts, sometimes different people, different countries even. And you just do everything you can to disguise the money trail, to make it look like you have nothing to do with it. And in the end, when you think it's far enough, you bring it back to you. Not in every case, obviously, but you integrate the money back to the financial system. It looks legitimate, and you can, you know, buy a yacht or something like that, and make yourself rich. But that's kind of the better case, right? Because sometimes the money ends up funding other illegal activities, terrorism, or something like that.
Yeah, so the purchase of a yacht would be better than, for example, the purchase of weapons and so on, which the money could also be used for, right?
But unfortunately, that happens. Like, it is really connected to a lot of organized crime, drug deals, buying weapons, funding terrorism, and the tax evasion bit is just the small part, or the not so much of a big deal compared to the other stuff that money can be used for when it is laundered.
Interesting. Well, everything you say sounds a lot like network, sounds a lot like a lot of data, and that, guess what that makes me think of graphs, right? How do graphs come in when we fight money laundering? On the one hand, what the scenario you just described, with, for example, sending lots of small transactions to a number of bank accounts that are all connected over several links to a certain individual. You need to monitor all this data. Can you do that manually? Well, you could, but how many people would you need then, right? And how much time would that take? With a good graph solution, you can set up automated monitoring. You have your data set, you know which questions to ask, and you can ask those questions in form of a pattern repeatedly against the data set. And then you can make sure you are alerted if a match is found, if a suspicious activity is found. So there's an automated process where you can lean back and save some time. Then there is the manual process, because of course a lot of activity happens that could be suspicious, but you have to have a manual and human check on if it actually is suspicious. Graph analytics help you to see data in its context. So to me, money laundering is a network. It's all about, sending money from one place to the other and obscuring the trail by many connections. So there's a lot of things you don't know when you start analysis, or when you start investigation, and you don't know what you don't know, right? But the graph will be able to surface those unknowns. In the end, every country has anti-money laundering regulations, and these regulations apply for everybody that all the institutions that handle money in those countries. It is really important that when the data is monitored and then evaluated, or the activities are evaluated, that it can be documented and later shared, because eventually, if the activities are actually suspicious, a suspicious matter report has to be compiled and shared with the financial regulators, right? So all these 3 points, it's very high level, but this is where graph solutions come in.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think this is something that a lot of people do not realize, how much laws and regulations there are around money laundering, and how much pressure there is at banks and financial institutions to detect money laundering. And the failure to do so can result in enormous fines for these institutions.
And bad reputation, right? We hear ever again how banks are criticized for not being able, or for not reporting money laundering cases or tax evasion cases.
Yes.
Maybe they don't have the right tool in place to do so.
But that's where Hume comes in, right?
That's right.
Just told us about.
Yeah, because Hume, it's, of course, there are many graph solutions out there. The thing with Hume is that it's not, just a solution that helps you to visualize your graph data. Others, you can do that in many ways. The great thing about Hume is that it sits right on top of Neo4j. It's a graph native solution. What that enables is that you can, first of all, do everything much faster. You can query Neo4j faster, you can get the results back faster, you can investigate in a more intuitive way. So that is one thing with Hume. The other thing is that for years now at Graphaware, we have worked with customers that have to comply with those regulations, right? So what we did what we do all the time when we think about features in Hume, we think about roadmap, how should we develop? We think about the needs of those clients. Here I put together the things that we want to show you in the demo. It's a selection of the features in Hume, right? But I think they are quite valid for the anti-money laundering case. And I want to start with graph-specific data orchestration. We talked about that there's a lot of data out there that is subject to permanent change, and that data has to be ingested to somewhere, monitored, and maybe analyzed, or eventually some of it analyzed manually. So, you can think ETL, you can think data transformation and so on. The important thing is that you are able to manage a flow of data and that you can transform it in a good way, and that you can then read it into your Neo4j database, right? In Hume, we have Orchestra, which allows you to create workflows that manipulate the data before you can put it into Neo4j and then make it available for data analysis, for the analysis in the graph. This part is not, we won't show that to you in today's demo because, it's a really nice part of Hume. It would take a little bit longer time to show you. So please let us know if you would like a demo on Orchestra, and we do one for you, okay? What we're going to show you is automated alerts. So as we said before, you can set up alerts in Hume that scan your data set for changes, or you formulate a query and you send that query against the data. And when there is a match, you will be alerted, right? And that takes the burden of manual monitoring off you. Actions, a very powerful feature in Hume. You create a query and then you can use it in several ways, right? And there isn't really any limitation on what you can do with actions in Hume. I'm going to show you a few things today, but if you try Hume, you're going to see there's much more you can do with it. Styles. Let's say you have quite a big amount of data or a view nodes on the screen. You want to see patterns right away. You don't want to dig into every node and maybe check attributes and so on. With styles, you can surface certain things right onto the appearance of the node. For example, the values of attributes. That makes it much easier to see patterns. Temporal view. Data often comes with a temporal context, right? In money laundering, that's the case. Hume helps you to see the temporal context as well. The export of details. We discussed that you have to compile reports that maybe have to be shared with financial regulators. So it's important that you can take parts of your analysis out of the system and put it into this report. Comments. While you're investigating, it's very nice to put down what you find, right, step by step, and you can put your thoughts down. In the end, the investigators are highly skilled people that are subject matter experts. Their thoughts on what is on the screen is highly important, right? So we have the option of putting down comments. Snapshots allow you to take a snapshot of what you found and either keep it for later processing or connected processes, or maybe also integrate it into your report, right? And then you will want to share. Maybe you want to share with another colleague who double checks. Maybe you share with the financial regulator. Good.
Let's see it.
Yeah, you mean we start a demo?
Yeah.
Okay. I can't stop talking just yet. There was another, before we start a demo, I wanted to bring everybody on the, so you have the context. We place today's demo in the scenario of a bank, the daily business of a bank. Now let us abstract a little bit. The regulations in each country are different when it comes to fraud prevention. We said in our bank, there are two patterns that are considered suspicious for the simplicity of the webinar, okay? One is if there is very big amounts that are sent to the same account holder. It could be sent to many different accounts, but the same account holder within a certain time frame. And the other suspicious pattern or suspicious activity would be that there are many smaller transactions to the accounts that have the same account owner. Yeah, we discussed layering and all that, and we discussed the integration of the money. So at some point you want to take it all out and spend it. So that is our context today. So from here, allow me to just stop sharing for a second so I can show my other screen to you. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Okay, can you see Hume now?
No, we
Can you see something else? Okay,
yeah.
Let's see. That's interesting. Why can't you? Okay, let's do like that. I won't share you my screen, but here we go.
Yeah.
There we can see the perspectives in Hume. You're going to lose my face now because I want you to focus on the demo, so I switch off my camera. See you in a bit. Good. I wanted to start here because first of all, it's the data model of this bank. Yeah, so it is a representation of the domain of the bank, but it also is, you know, the data. It is also like the representation of the data that the bank has in Neo4j. In Hume, we call the data model the schema, and you see here that it has classes and relationship types in between it. The classes can have attributes. So you see that the bank, of course, has bank accounts. There are transactions to and from those bank accounts. There are entities. In our case, it's companies that have the bank accounts. You can see they have lots of attributes. And there are people that own those companies. Here they're called officers. So they own companies and they also have bank accounts, of course. And then you have intermediaries. It's often the people that set up an entity, often law firms or other facilitators. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to show you here, you probably think, what's all the gray things there in the background? That's what we can do with perspectives in Hume. You can make sure that people that are not supposed to see certain relationships, certain classes, for example, a regular person, cannot see them. So it's a type of access control on a detailed level, right? And you could even do that on the attribute basis. So I could decide in this perspective to hide the attribute suspect. Yeah. Okay, good. The next thing I want to show you were the automated alerts that we talked about. So here we can define patterns. So the pattern would be your question, your query against the database, right? And here, or it would contain your query. So here you see we can create a cipher query that doesn't only contain, you know, what should be monitored, but you can also say, you know, that there has to be an officer that receives a total amount in a certain time frame, and the total amount should be above a certain limit. Here it's 500,000. The interesting thing here is that it's not just about the node itself, right? It can also be based on the change, the data change in a single attribute of the node. So that's pretty nice. And then you can run them as often as you think is necessary. And you can use this pattern for creating alerts. You see here we have those two suspicious activities that we monitor. I'd like to stay with you on the example of the big amount of money that is sent within 24 hours. Let's say it's my task in the bank to monitor for those suspect reports. Good. So there are two alerts created here, just one on that topic. In the end, you could use a pattern for as many alerts as you want to, depends on how you structure your teams or the work. In our case, it's two people checking those. We have an email notification set up to my colleague Christoph and to me. We both work on this issue or on these patterns. And we are notified as soon as an event is generated. And I see there were many successful executions earlier, and I have received emails, right? So the email luckily contains a direct link. I've received a view over the last, during today. So let's start with one of them. Here we see the details of the event. I can see that there's an individual called Selma Gordon, and there seems to be a total amount of, it's quite a lot of 2,100,000 euros that has been sent to her within 24 hours. I need to check that more in detail. What I could do now is that I open this in the graph, right, and start investigating. But Hume offers me a shortcut here. So instead of opening it and then doing some manual steps, I have something predefined for me here, and that is to open this node right away in its context of the transaction of the last 24 hours. So that's really nice. I will save quite a bit of clicking around. So let's run that. I expand here. You can see here comes the visualization with the node of this individual, and the action was run. So I have all the nodes around it too, which is pretty nice. The first thing I'd like to do is to apply a style that I created. The style helps me to understand how high the transactions are. And right away I can see, you know, the full circle, the full red circle means that it's 1 million. And I see right away that we have an almost full circle here, almost half here, and so on. So I can see with one view that it's actually the exact amount that was quoted in event earlier, right? That we saw in the event details in the previous screen. How does that look time-wise? When did these transactions come in? Okay, so yeah, very interesting. So two of the transactions were sent within 5 minutes from each other, and to 2 different accounts, right? Just to the graph view here, I can see that they are connected to the same individual there. And then another one just a minute later, or within a 5 minute span after that. And a quite high one at that, 3rd account. And then another one 4 hours later. And definitely falls into what our regulators want to be informed about. So what I do now is that I save a little bit of data for my report later, because I know that they will want to know the transaction numbers pretty much. I have an action here that helps me to export this information. So I can export the transaction ID here and the account ID. It's going to be important for the regulators later. So I export it, I save it for later, and you put it into my report. Next question. Where does this money come from, right? So let's see. Some other bank account issued those payments. That wasn't much movement. They seem to come from similar places. Let's change layout here so I can see it a bit better. Okay, so we have the individual that has the bank account that received these payments, and then we have 3 bank accounts that it was issued from. And it looks to me like these 2 could be the same account holder. Okay, let's see. Wait, here. Who owns them? Same person, interesting. And then we have a 3rd person here. It's an intermediary, so, but still an individual name. So it could be a law firm still. Either way, very interesting. So what I would like to understand now is if those, where these people got the money from and what if they are connected. It seems to me that Selma doesn't have any more connections to her, so I'm going to continue my investigation here. But before I do that, I'd like to take my first comment about the findings that I have so far. So let me comment here. Just a second. Good. So in a short amount of time, we need to investigate that further. Excel export, right? So the details can be seen there. Then I should not have this typo in here. Good, let's add to comment. Okay, so let me now continue the investigation here. We have Mr. Isaac Albers. Who is that person? I would like to see if that person has any companies attached to him or owning, if he owns any companies, and if these companies are somehow connected to intermediaries. So you see here, I can build quite a nice query that I would have otherwise to do in Cypher. So this is a nice feature for people that rather prefer to do things visually than in code. Let's go like that. Okay, I'm gonna change layout here. And okay, that was a hit. I didn't expect that. So Mr. Isaac Albers indeed owns quite a few companies, and they're all but one connected to the same intermediary. Definitely a little bit odd. So I'll take this one away because it is not the suspicious activity I'm after. And then I'd like to make another note here. Let me just select these notes because I think we need to look into the ownership of this. So copy, here's the comment. I think the officer owns an unusually large amount of companies. And the whole connection to Mrs. Bridge needs to be investigated as well. Okay, so now I understand a bit more about the connectedness and the business of Mr. Albers and Mrs. Bridges here, but I still don't know where the money comes from that was sent to this individual, Selma Gordon. I'd like to extend a little bit to see if maybe the intermediary was involved in those transactions as well. So I'd like to see this bank account of Mr. Albers received money that was issued by a bank account, right? And is that in any way related to intermediary? Yeah. And of course, I can see here it's Mrs. Bridges. My style helps me to see right away that there is something odd here. It's all the same amounts. Let's open temporal analysis. And it's all in a short period of time. Let me pull it down a little for us. Look, it's just a few hours here, and transaction after transaction comes in. Reminds me a little bit of what we heard about the layering earlier. Okay, anyway, I know that this is another suspicious activity that the regulators want me to watch out for. I'd like to also check on this account. Let's do the multiple step query. So we set a bank account receives money that comes from different bank account. It's maybe owned by an intermediary. And there we have the same. Let's zoom in a little. Wow. Okay. Okay, I'll do, good. Let me comment on this as well. So let's take this to start with. Because we have a threshold here that is met. Okay, so the threshold is met, and we need to understand the transactions, the relationship and the nature of the transactions, right? We need to, or the regulator actually, not we, not us as the bank, but the regulator needs to be informed about this. Okay, good. I will not need a temporal analysis from that point. I think what I do need now is to start thinking about my report. I have uncovered enough suspicious activity here. It's obviously something that the regulator wants to be informed about. So the next step for me is to share this with my colleague Christoph, who is on the same, who works with the same subject. And it's important for us that 4 eyes, we have the 4-eye principle, right? After all, the impact of our finding can be quite big. So what I do in order for Christoph to have a look is that I take a snapshot. Okay, I need some good name for him. Here we go. And I'm going to explain to Christoph a little bit what I found on a high level, but then I'd also like to check him the comments for details, right? Let's see, I saved that. Let's open it over here. Good. I wanted to create a link that I can share. I sent it over to Christoph. But another thing that I want to do with this link is that I integrate it into our report. And I think it's always a little bit boring with just putting a link. So what I also going to do is that I export an image. And then I can share that image as well. I don't think you see the image now because I don't share it, but I can tell you it looks exactly the same as what you see on the screen. Okay, with this, I have investigated this event that came in, and I'd like to, since it's on Christoph's table now, conclude the demo. And I think I hand over to you again, Sasha, and I can switch over my camera again.
Hey. Hi, great demo. Thank you very much. And I see the black screen. Okay, great. Cool. So now we have some time for questions. So some of the questions are, well, let's start with, for which databases can I set up automated alerts? Question for you.
In the end, you would run the query against your Neo4j database. But of course, you bring into Neo4j whatever you need to monitor, right? So you would create a data pipeline for the ingestion and then make sure that through Orchestra, you set up a workflow and bring the data into Neo4j, and then you can run the queries against that database.
All right, cool. Thank you. And can people monitor changes in attributes of nodes with the alerts, right?
Yeah, exactly. So this is a recent thing that we added to our alerting feature, that you can monitor for single attributes to change. Like in our case, for example, let's take another case. Let's say you monitor a person and they change phone numbers, right? And the phone number is an attribute to the person node. You can monitor for that as well. So that way I could always be on top of your phone number, Alexandra, and you don't have to send me an SMS with it.
Wow. That's, we work with Hume and kind of know what it does. Like, I mean, even I know kind of what it does, but sometimes you just don't put things together and then I'm shocked.
Yeah, but it could be very useful for a company, right? To always have the phone number directory updated. Anyway, stupid example, probably.
Right.
Good.
Then we have a question if we offer Hume trials.
Yes. So if you'd like to try out Hume, just contact us and we can set it up for you. We will need to understand a little bit better what your business is, your domain, and then we'll make sure that you can try out Hume and support you in case you have questions or anything, right?
Great. Can people ingest data from SQL databases and from Excel exports?
Yeah. You do that via Orchestra.
Yes, exactly. We should really make a webinar with Orchestra. And
that would be nice.
Because that's a whole other thing. Okay, then we have one more. Can you create a report directly in Hume?
At the moment, I'd really like to. You saw in the webinar that you didn't see it. And it's one of those things that are high on my list for this year. So that we facilitate that end of the process as well, right? That you can compile the report and then you have it in Hume. And our vision is that the report is not, of course you can print it and share it as a fixed, in a fixed format. But if you later need to continue working on something, right, you can still open it. And the other thing that I would like to make sure with this report is that you can collaborate on it. You saw now, for example, we had the 4I principle I need to share with a colleague and make sure that they agree with what I found. It should be the same with the report, right? It's always better the more eyes can check.
Great, thank you. There's also somebody asking if they need to know Cypher to explore the data.
You saw this way of me building a multi-path query or my multi-step path, right? And that formed a query. So we call this feature advanced expand. It's made for people that don't want to use Cypher, right? So you can use that instead of Cypher to explore the data.
Yeah, that's what you showed us as well, right? That's a great feature. I like that one. Okay, and what happens to an event from an alert if the underlying data changes?
Okay, that's a non-trivial problem. So you saw in the example of the demo, I logged in and the emails that I had gotten were already a few hours old, right? Maybe something changed during that time, or it was a 24 hours time frame, maybe 24 hours have passed. We show the data as is, right? So what we understand from our customers and from their application and real world scenarios is that the old data in the end isn't that important at that point.
Okay, and you explored the data that you got alerted on in a temporary visualization. Can you explain a little bit what that is?
A temporary visualization is, you spin up a new visualization that is focused only on the data that you want to explore there. And it's available for 48 hours and afterwards it will be deleted. So what it does is that it helps you to do a quick investigation and not litter your Hume with lots of things that you don't need later, right? What I did was that I took a snapshot, and that's the case for me. If I want to access the same visualization later, I can also save it, right? But you saw how many events I have. If I create a permanent visualization for each of those events, I need an assistant who deletes all the visualizations in the end of the day, right?
Okay, thank you. I think that's it. We're kind of running out of time. We have a couple more questions here. Some are about money laundering, but unfortunately they're beyond the scope of what we can answer. So sorry about that, guys, but we're really not experts on this. And the rest of the questions...
the questions aren't so anti-money laundering related. So therefore, what we can do is that you send them to us directly, right? You see our email addresses here. So for everything that is a bit outside of the topic of the webinar, contact us, and also for things inside of the topic of the webinar.
Exactly. And everything else we didn't get to, we will send you answers and reach out to you. So thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for joining. And Alexandra, thank you so much for coming into the webinar. It was, it was great having it with you.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you, Esther.
Good. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.
Bye.